Hey, well, good morning, church. Hey, great to be here with you. If you're a guest, I want to give you a warm welcome. And those of you watching online, glad you are tuned in with us as well. We are in a series right now called When in Babylon. And we're going to be studying some key events that take place in the book of Daniel. Last week, I talked about the context for the book of Daniel. In fact, I think we have a map, if we can bring that up. This shows you sort of how Judah, the people of Israel, were displaced from Israel into this place called Babylon. You'll see on the left, along the Mediterranean Sea, that's where you see Judah, this southern region of Israel. In the year 586 BC, Jerusalem was sacked, the first temple was destroyed, and many of the treasures and many of the people were carried off. That's what that red line is. They were exiled. They went up there along what's known as the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia there. That was the major road system down into Babylon along the Euphrates River, roughly 750 miles away. And so that might as well have been a different, planet to be on for the people of Israel. And we can only imagine what that was like, go from a Jewish way of life to now having to figure out how to navigate this Babylonian way of life. And that's why we're in the series, guys. I was doing some research. If you look even into the 1990s, over 70% of people in the U.S. Frequented church in some capacity. Okay, not that long ago, and I've shared with us over the last couple of weeks, just over the last few years, that's changed to where now if you go to church, you are now officially in the minority. And as that's happening, we're seeing culture change around us. We're probably going to see more and more moral decay around us, all right? It's going to be, in other words, harder and harder to live out our Christian faith in school, in the workplace, things like that. However, God gives us the book of Daniel. That's what the book of Daniel is all about, and that's why it's so helpful, because in Daniel, we learn how to have hope when we're in the midst of Babylon. Daniel teaches us how to stand up for our faith and to have courage when we're faced with fears. And it also teaches us how to have wisdom and humility to navigate the Babylonian context we might find ourselves in, okay? And so that's what we're going to be studying over the next several weeks. Many years ago, Danielle and I, we had our lives kind of, if I can say, we got to have our lives turned upside down. At least there was a major shift in our life. We got pregnant, okay? Mostly Danielle, okay? All right, we learned that we weren't just going to have one, we were having twins, okay? So not just one bun in the oven, two buns in the oven. And this morning I was thinking about it. Technically, it's 4 buns in the oven, but I let that one land on you. But anyways, I remember when this happened, it was such a major shift, at least in my life. Danielle and I had been just a couple. We could do whatever we wanted. We had total freedom on Friday nights. No longer the case, right? We weren't just going out to do whatever we wanted anymore, because now we're trying to raise these 2 kids, and we started to experience the challenges that came with that. And as they got older and could start to walk and run, things like that, toddler stage, one of the things our kids would do whenever we went into a public place is they would conspire with each other, and one would run one way, and the other one would run whatever the opposite direction was. So you can imagine this was a challenge anywhere we went, because we were often having to run after the kids, and it could be scary at times. So that's when Danielle and I decided to buy this little contraption. Now on the surface, it looks like a fun little backpack for kids to wear. Hey, come here, Logan, put on the monkey backpack. How cool is that you get to wear a monkey backpack? But really what it is a glorified leash, okay? Okay, and I know people frown upon these, and trust me, we've gotten the looks, all right? Don't judge us, okay? We were at that stage, we're just trying to figure it out. How are we going to do this thing when we go, into public? But it was on one occasion, we finally got the courage to go to the Mall of America with our kids, and we had them leashed up. And I'll never forget, we walked into Nordstrom's, okay? And we just walked in, and the kids did what they always do. They ran. But you've seen what happens to a dog when it gets to the end of the leash. A little yelp. And Logan didn't just yelp, he went straight to the floor. And he just kind of gave up. He's like, all right, my running away days are over. What's even the point of getting back up? And so he just lay there like a sack of potatoes on this tile floor. Now here's the problem. There was this lady, she was in a motorized cart, and she had like a dog in her lap, so I don't know if that's what was distracting her or we were right there. We had just come in, so for her it was the exit. Maybe she was just focused on the exit. But she acted like she didn't see Logan lying there in the middle of the floor, and she was coming right at him. So you can imagine, I've got Logan's leash, and I'm, Logan, get up, right? Logan, get up. And she's not stopping. She's not slowing down. She and her dog are just coming right at us. And so last moment, I had no other choice. I had to drag Logan. You could hear his hands. And of course, everyone's watching. It's super embarrassing. And this lady just headed right out. And we learned that this was not going to work on our son, Logan. He was not going to have it. If you put this on him, he was going to drop to the floor, and you were going to literally have to drag him through whatever public place you went. And I bring this up because I wonder how many of us, have tried to figure out solutions in our own life only to figure out it didn't work. I wonder this morning how many of us have things in our life, like raising kids, that feels like it's beyond us and maybe outside of our control. There's so many things in life that are just bigger than we are and feels outside of our control because it is outside of our control. For some of you, it is your children. For some of you, it's your job situation right now or your financial situation. Some of us see what's just happening in our culture, and we see what's happening in the world, and it feels like it's outside of our control. So what do we do? What do we do when that happens? Well, this morning we're going to get into Daniel 2. We're going to look at part of Daniel 2, and by the way, I know many of your small groups are studying this. Study chapter 2, and I would encourage all of us to read all of chapter 2, because we're just going to be able to deal with one part, but all of chapter 2 is great. But we're going to start in verse 1 here. We read that in the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams. His mind was troubled, and he could not sleep. So the king summoned the magicians, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to tell him what he had dreamed. And when they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means. And then the astrologers answered the king, May the king live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will interpret it. The king replied to the astrologers, This is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble. But if you tell me the dream and explain it, you will receive from me gifts and rewards and great honor. So tell me the dream and interpret it for me. So here's what's going on. Nebuchadnezzar has had this dream, and he invites in the wise men to interpret the dream for him, but he's not going to tell him what the dream is, because he realizes anybody could make up an interpretation. Anybody could come up with some mumbo jumbo to say, this is what your dream meant. If you really have power, Nebuchadnezzar says, saying, if you're really capable to do things you claim, then you should be able to not only tell me the interpretation of my dream, you should be able to tell me what my dream was. Verse 7, once more they replied, Let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will interpret it. Friends, this is called selective hearing, okay? They're acting like they didn't hear that part. And then the king answered, I am certain that you are trying to gain time because you realize that this is what I have firmly decided. If you do not tell me the dream, there's only one penalty for you. You have conspired to tell me misleading and wicked things, hoping the situation will change. So then, tell me the dream, and I will know that you can interpret it for me. So he just repeats himself. Guys, I'm not telling you what the dream is. You need to tell me what the dream is. Okay, verse 10, the astrologers answered the king, there is no one on earth who can do what the king asks. No king, however great and mighty, has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter or astrologer. What the king asks is too difficult. No one can reveal it to the king, this is an interesting statement here, except the gods, and they do not live among humans. So this is the astrologers and wise men pushing back. Okay. This made the king so angry and furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree was issued to put to the wise men, these are those who work in Nebuchadnezzar's courts, right? To put all of these wise men to death, and men were sent to look for Daniel and his friends to put them to death. So Daniel and these other Jewish wise men, they're not even there. And yet they're going to be put to death as well. This was a situation completely out of Daniel's control. Okay? Verse 14, when Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, had gone out to put to death the wise men of Babylon, I love this, Daniel spoke to him with wisdom and tact. Not with hostility, right? Not with resistance. He spoke to him with wisdom and tact, trying to calm the situation. But he did ask the king's officer, why did the king issue such a harsh decree? And Arioch then explained the matter to Daniel. At this, Daniel went into the king and asked for time so that he might interpret the dream for him. Okay? In verse 17, Daniel returned to his house and explained the matter to his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He urged them to plead for mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery so that he and his friends might not be executed with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. And during the night, verse 19, the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision. So, in other words, God answered these men's prayer. And you can read on how something really cool comes from that as Daniel's able to not only interpret the dream for Nebuchadnezzar, but tell him what his dream was. Guys, my question for you this morning is, what do you do when you find yourself in a situation that is outside of your control? Right? I know what I do. I tend to try to take matters into my own hands, right? I tend to try to figure out my own solution to the problems that I face. Even problems that I know are outside of my control. I just wonder, what do you do? Do you run to the bookstore in the self-help section? Many people, they find out they're sick, the first thing they do, they run out to the doctor. Financial situation, you start trying to network and trying to figure out a solution to your financial problem. I mean, what's the first thing you do? Guys, and please don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong to go to the self-help section. I'm not saying it's wrong to see a doctor. I'm not saying it's wrong to try to network. But my question is, what is the first thing that you do? Because often the first thing we try to do is take matters into our own hands. Daniel certainly could have done that. He could have tried to find someone close to Nebuchadnezzar. Hey, do you know anything? Did he maybe tell you his dream? First thing Daniel does is praise, okay? Goes to the God of heaven. And it's not just sometimes taking matters into our own hands. It's becoming more and more popular now to see people actually turning to some of these gods, just like the astrologers and magicians and wise men in Nebuchadnezzar's council. Many people today are turning to things like astrology. We see people today turning things, it's becoming mainstream for people to mess with things like tarot cards and that kind of stuff. They're selling this now. You can find this in many stores today, okay? In fact, I just heard someone's testimony. She works in finance, and she was saying that it's becoming more and more common to run into high-level executives who are messing with tarot cards and reading tarot cards and trying to predict their future so that they can get an edge on the market for their business or their company that they're running. Guys, I'm telling you right now, you just need to know this. Atheism is dying out. You're going to see atheism die out. New Ageism and reaching out to these other dark powers is becoming more and more common, and you're going to just see that increase in the days ahead. And what are you turning to? Trying to do it on your own? Are you turning it to something else? We see what Daniel and these other godly men do. They turn to what Daniel calls the God of heaven, Yahweh. And that's what Daniel 2 teaches us. These astrologers, these people turning to these other dark forces, they can't figure it out. They don't have enough power. But Daniel knows a God who can reveal this dream and the interpretation to him. When we find ourselves in times of trouble, guys, the temptation, right, is to make it all about us. And I just want to remind us this morning, we're living in a time in light of what we see happening culturally, in light of what we see happening in the world around us, maybe in light of what's going on in your own life, where I think this morning what we need to do is just not make this about us. We need to remember who the God of heaven that Daniel went to, who he is. Okay? And my hope is that that's going to bring us some real peace this morning when we walk out of here. So what we're going to do is I just want to give us 3 reminders. Maybe for some of you, you'll be hearing this for the first time. These reminders of what's known as the omni statements, these 3 attributes or characteristics of who our God is. And I just want to remind you of who Yahweh is this morning. We put our focus on him. So here's the first omni statement, okay? Omniscience. And what this means is that the God of heaven is all-knowing. He knows all things. We read this in Psalm 139. David says this about Yahweh. You have searched me, Yahweh. That's what it would say in the Hebrew technically. And you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Look at verse 4. Before a word is on my tongue, Yahweh, you know it completely. You already know it. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. So many scriptures like this that teach us that God is omniscient. He knows all things, including even the future. What you're going to say before you even say it, okay? And then when you stop and think about that for a second, God knows the future. He knows the future perfectly. What a resource we have. What a resource. A being that knows all things. Danielle and I, one time we were headed up north. We were going to stay at this place we had stayed at many times. It took about 2.5 hours to get there. Normally we would take 35. But every summer in Minnesota, the farther you get up north, what can you count on? Construction, right? Traffic. And on this occasion, this was a Friday night, everyone was headed to their cabin. And so what normally took about 2.5 hours was going to take almost double that time. It was going to take about 4.5 to 5 hours, okay, to make it up there. But Danielle and I didn't take 35 because we got on one of those little apps, it shows you the map, and it told us this is going to take you 4.5, 5 hours if you go 35. Take 169 with a little bit of a detour, and you're going to get there in about the same time it always takes. So we, as you can imagine, got on 169, and it was so long, suckers, on 35. Guys, I love these maps. I love these apps, these aerial views. This is how I think of God guiding us. Do you realize he has an aerial view of your life? He has an aerial view. He sees the future, and he sees the best road that you need to take to help you fulfill the perfect purpose and plan he has for your life. He's all-knowing. He is a great resource to turn to when you need to know what path to take. You can imagine this, guys. I was my senior year. It would have been my senior year of high school, but I dropped out of high school. I was working at a Chick-fil-A, daytime hours, and I'm watching my peers, after school come through the drive-thru, and I'm serving them. And the next year, they're going off to universities, and they're going off to college. I'm sitting there working at Chick-fil-A, high school dropout, going, I don't know what my future holds. It felt very hopeless. Can you imagine that? I don't have any doors opening to me. I'm a high school dropout working at Chick-fil-A, right? Just serving my peers coming through. But I was not powerless because I know a God who knows all things. And so I prayed, and I was needy, and I was desperate, and I asked him, God, show me the plan, show me a way, open a door. And I don't want you to think it was, God always gave me clarity on every decision I made. That's not what happened. There was mystery. There was waiting. But here's what I'm trying to say, guys. If you will just have the desire to know his plan for your life, if you will have the desire for a God who knows all things, here's what I'm telling you is going to happen. You're going to live, you're going to trust in him with all of your heart. You're going to lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways, you're going to acknowledge him, and what? He's going to make your path straight. And you're going to get to a place in life where you look back and you go, how did I get from there to here? Here's how. Yahweh, who's an all-knowing, omniscient God. What a resource we have in that our God knows all things. Here's the second omni statement for us. Omnipotence. The God of heaven is all-powerful, right? Job 42:2 says, I know you can do all things, no purpose of yours can be thwarted. And many times throughout the scriptures, we read that nothing is impossible for our God. Why? Because he is an omnipotent God. He is an all-powerful God. He doesn't just know everything, he can do something with that knowledge. And nothing can thwart his plan. Guys, I want us to think about this for a minute, and I know if this is going to sound a little weird to some of us, okay? If we just have kind of like a Sunday school level understanding of biblical things, this might strike you a little odd, what I'm going to say, but just hang in there, okay? I want to remind us this morning that our God is a scary God. I want to remind us this morning that the God that we worship is actually a very frightening God. Dare I say, he is a terrifying God, okay? Halloween's approaching, and people love the scary stuff, right? They love to dress up in crazy costumes, do the mean pumpkin carvings and stuff like that. Honestly, what I think the scariest thing about Halloween is candy corn. I do not know what that stuff is. That stuff is disgusting. I don't know how you guys eat that stuff. It's wax. But everyone loves the scary, like the edgy, right? The dark. People, want to be scary. They want to. Do you know what the most scary, frightening being in all the universe is? You need to be reminded this morning. It's actually Yahweh, okay? It's Yahweh himself. In fact, we have this story in Exodus 33 where Moses, who is the only one, by the way, allowed up the holy hill. Anybody else, God's like, you touch that hill, you're dead. Moses can come up and see me. And at one point, Moses goes up this mountain, and he's like, God, I want to see your presence. I actually want to see your glory pass me by. And God's like, okay, Moses. I will show you who I am, but I can only show you my backside. I will pass by and I will show you who I am. But Exodus 33:20, but he said, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. In other words, Moses, if you were to see my face, if you were to see who I am as I am in myself, if you were to see me, you would drop dead where you stand. There are many people in the Bible who see angels. There are many people in the Bible who see demonic stuff. Nowhere else are we told that when people see the stuff, they drop dead where they stand. If you were to see Yahweh, so terrifying, so frightening, so glorious, if you saw him, you're dropping dead where you stand. Now, this raises this question then. Why would I want anything to do with this God? Why would I want to come to a terrifying God? C.S. Lewis, okay, he gives us a great answer for this. My kids are getting into The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe books and movies. And there's this scene where Aslan, the lion who represents God, he walks by. And one of the kids says to one of the creatures that serves Aslan, he says, is he safe? And you remember what the creature says? Oh, no, he is not safe. But he is good. Guys, he is not safe God. We weren't worshiping this morning a wimpy God. He is a scary God, but he is good. And the best way I can illustrate this is think about it this way. You find yourself out in a field in the middle of a storm, and it is thundering, and there is lightning striking near your feet. You would be terrified because there's something so big, something so out of your control taking place, right? But now imagine that same scenario. It's storming, it's thundering, it's lightning, but you are in the safety and the comfort of your living room. In a comfy chair, and you got a warm drink, right? For me, that's going to be coffee. I know some of you drink lame tea. You're going to have your tea, right? But something warm in your hand, and you've got your throw blanket around you, and you are sitting there in that chair watching this storm rage around you. Friends, now what's going on? Your heart is being filled with awe and wonder. And this is what Jesus does for us, church. Jesus is your living room that you get to live in while the storm of God and all of his power rages around you. And the more you realize that, the more I'm telling you, your heart is going to be filled with awe and wonder for this God of glory. And what you learn is anything that you fear, fears him. Men, I especially need you to hear this. We do not worship and pray to a wimpy God. He is a God who is all powerful. Which brings us to the third and the last omni statement. God is omnipresent. He is all present. The God of heaven is all present. Jesus said this in Matthew 8:20, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. And so I want us to realize this God that I've just talked about, this God who knows all things, this God who is all powerful, wants to be with you. On one hand, we're reminded that our God today, with everything going on in the world, let's not forget, church, he's still sitting on the throne. Amen? But he's not just sitting on the throne. He's also here this morning with you if you are in Christ. And that's what Jesus came to do. Jesus came to take our sin away from us, but he didn't just take our sin away from us, he gave us his righteousness so that we could sit in that living room and enjoy a relationship with an awesome, awesome, awesome God. To think that this God is with us this morning, to think that this God is with you this morning, to hear your prayers, to think that this God is for you, that this God is your biggest fan and has your back. Why would we not go to him with our prayers? Do you think maybe he's a resource we should go to? And so I ask you again this morning, what's the worry or the fear or the stress that you're coming in here this morning with? What's the thing that's been heavy on your heart? The thing that maybe feels like it's so out of your control. It might be out of your control, but I want to remind you today, guys, it's not out of Yahweh's control. And I'm convinced of this. That what God is waiting for you, it's for some of you to finally decide in your heart to learn this skill of how to let go and let God. How to turn whatever that is completely, fully over to Him. To stop trying to do it on your own. And find your leash to control the situation and to start by just saying, God, I'm going to turn it over to you. And so what is that thing that you're bringing in this morning? Maybe it is your kids, right? Maybe it is your marriage. Maybe it's a family situation, job, finances, what's happening in culture, what's happening in the world. I want to challenge you today to let go and let God, because that's when God tends to show up and show off. So here's what I'm going to challenge us to do. We do this from time to time here at Edinbrook Church. I'm going to ask all of us to put out our hands like this. Can we all do that? Just put up your hands like this. And what this represents, whatever that problem is, whatever that thing is, maybe it is your future, just in general. I want you to hold on to that. And on the count of 3, what we're going to do is we're going to open our hands and we're going to release it over to Yahweh, the God of heaven. Okay? So on the count of 3, let's do that. Let's hold on to whatever that is. 1, 2, 3, release. Yeah, Yahweh, we hand these prayer requests, these burdens, these stresses, these worries, these fears, we hand them over to you completely, and we're not going to pick them back up. So help us, Lord, as your church to walk out of here today just a little lighter on our feet. Help us to find peace, knowing that you are going to carry these burdens for us. And God, I want to pray for everyone who just turned something over to you. God, work a miracle. Work a miracle. Do something with that. Show them that you are with them, that you are the God who is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-present. And get us to that place, ultimately, you want us to be, God, so that we can point other people to you. So we hand these things over to you and just trust now that you're going to do something great with it. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ and by the power of the Spirit, and all God's people said.